Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Here.
Councilmember Burnt?
Here.
Councilmember Palmer?
Here.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Here.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Here.
Councilmember Borden?
Here.
Mayor DeVeard.
Here. Item number 3, we will skip, unfortunately, our pastor Justin Jordan had to leave, and so we will move to item 4, adoption of the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. I even skipped that, yeah. The Pledge of Allegiance, if you will all rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we'll go for adoption of the agenda. My apologies.
Madam Mayor,
Mr.
I
Borton.
believe we're going to add an executive session on the back end of our regular meeting under Idaho State Code 74206, 1C and 1F. And then there is something moving up to A that I can't.
F.
Oh, F. I apologize. Thank you. Item 7F, Madam Mayor, will become the new 7A. It's kind of changing the order there. So with those two amendments, I move we adopt the agenda. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Under item 5, announcements, I will note that City Council will not have any meetings for the next 2 weeks. We do have one on the first week of August just for city business, and we have National Night Out that night. Town Hall meeting tomorrow at the Cincy Building. We appreciate Cincy being such a great corporate partner. It starts at 6:30, and primarily the discussions will center around the comprehensive plan and the e-scooters. Discovery Park ribbon cutting on Friday. I know that is a big deal, and so hopefully all of you and children are invited Friday the 26th at 11 a.m. And the grand opening is Saturday the 27th from 11 to 3. We have 2 different educational opportunities. Election 101 is on Tuesday the 30th because we do not have a city council meeting. Our city clerk from 6 to 7 and our city attorney will be discussing the upcoming elections for mayor and city council. And we have City Council 101 or City 101, and that is July 31st, the next day from 5:30 to 8. Last week we had the fire and public works and really good interaction with the people that were in attendance. I think there were around 20, 25. So we hope everyone joins us for that. Salmon Barbecue is Friday, August 2nd from 6 to 8 in Kleiner Park. And if you're a senior, you can go early. So, Joe, how old do you have to be a senior, considered a senior?
That is a good question, Madam Mayor. I cannot answer that question. I think we're shooting around 55, I want to say.
Ooh, I love that.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So,
55.
Yeah, I think it
If you're
would,
55
for
or
some reason that
older,
number pops in my
You
head.
get priority lining. That's awesome. And that starts at 5:30 or 5?
I believe it's 5
Okay.
for seniors.
Yes, because 55 and older, we eat earlier.
Yes.
Okay. National Night Out is August 6th, and those are our community announcements. Does anyone have anything to add? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Clerk, any signups under item 6?
Madam Mayor, there are no signups.
Okay, item 7, under action items. We will ask for our community development. Director, did you have anything you wanted to say on this? Or is,
Madam Mayor, members of the council, a pleasure to be with you. Wanted to just, put squarely before you this Civic Block RFP that is really the next step in the momentum and redevelopment of our downtown, reinvigoration and so forth. This one is one that we're excited about, the partnership. We've had some great conversation with the business community as well as others, and what this could mean to our downtown. And we appreciate the consideration for moving it forward. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have and look forward to the comments.
okay, council comments, questions?
Madam Mayor,
Burnt?
the downtown corridor is the heartbeat of our city, and I'm really truly excited about any opportunity, whether it's this opportunity or any other opportunity that comes to downtown Meridian that presents an opportunity for great minds to get together to make our city a better place. And so I'm in favor of this RFP going forward. Thank you, Cameron.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. This is under action items, so the consideration is to move the process forward.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton?
prior to any, I guess, initiation of this process, I had reached out to our city attorney as the proper course to make a determination on any potential or actual conflicts of interest for my participation in any of this process from this stage going forward. So I'm going to ask if that's okay, Madam Mayor, for Mr. Neri to provide his opinion and direction on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Councilman Borton, we did look into this question in regards to your current business partnership with Council Lakey for the MDC board. Based on this proposal and what's being presented today, we find no conflict with both city code or state code for your participation in this vote to move this forward.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Burnt?
Madam Mayor, sorry.
Ms. Lowell Roberts?
Madam Mayor, I do have a question. I don't know if it's better addressed to Cameron or to Mr. Neri, but I was wondering if it's possible to include in the RFP that if you are seeking anything from the city beyond what is listed in this RFP, to reach out prior rather than just proceed with the RFP, to kind of make it clear that if you're wanting anything other than what is included in the RFP, that we need to answer that prior to them just responding to the RFP.
Thought of that? Thought?
That maybe legal can help word
Yep.
that so that,
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Little Roberts, yeah, that's no problem. We can certainly include that as part of the RFP. Oftentimes in RFPs, there may be questions that get generated, and there will be an opportunity to answer those questions. So that's a great position
point.
or great thing we could add.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
so when that happens, the answers are sent to all the known applicants at the time, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So everybody has the same information.
All right.
Sounds good.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Burnt?
Is this requiring a vote? I would assume so, action item. I move that we approve the consideration of an RFP civic block request for proposals.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer?
just so I understand the process, is there a point when there's a formal approval of council on the language of the RFP after adjustments are made? Or is this go forth and put out what we're asking to be adjusted without us looking after it's done?
Great question.
Question?
Mr. Neri?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I guess probably Mr. Ariel should answer that. I guess I'm not sure exactly what specific things you're asking. Are we talking about the selection process or what specifics? I guess I'm not clear, Councilmember Palmer.
Madam Mayor?
I think it's just making sure that the language is covering what Ms. Milam just added, and the desire, I believe, to address some of the concerns with hearing the presentations on the numbers, if there's 3 or less, that all are presented in front of council. And if there's more than 3, that the top 3 scoring submittals are presented.
And Madam Mayor, I think that was the direction we understood. And I think Mr. Ariel can add that without having to bring it back again if that's what the council is okay with.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer?
And also, that with those 3 presentations, the council would be able to pick from any one of the 3 or reject all of them. I do think it is important the council have a chance to review it, in that, having deja vu, we had a council meeting in which we discussed changes that we wanted made to an RFP. The RFP was put out without those changes in it. So it would be my preference that we view the actual document before it's submitted to the public.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner?
what I think I'm hearing from Councilmember Palmer, and if his intent, I have to say I agree, is we've seen a draft version. I don't believe that the draft version that we have seen is what is intended to be submitted to the public. And if I think what I'm hearing from Councilmember Palmer, that he would like to see a final draft before he's comfortable with submitting it to the public. And if that's the case, I feel the same way as well, and that would be the direction I would rather move forward with. And if, sorry, Madam Mayor, if it's coming back for us, for the council to review and approve that final draft before it's issued, then I'm supportive of the motion as is. If we won't see a final draft again before it's sent to the public, then I'll be speaking in opposition to this motion.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Milam?
Cameron, could you go bring us back a final draft with those added words in an hour?
Yeah, certainly the intent is to fold in all the comments and make sure that we're, adhering to the desires of the council. So we'll absolutely share, the revised and updated version with you all. And if you desire to approve that prior to it being released, I don't see any reason why we can't do that.
And the release date is when?
August 6th?
Yes, correct. We were anticipating August 6th being the release date.
If you move it to August 7th, you can use August 6th under the business of the city to make sure that if it carries anything that is covered in the motion.
We won't have a meeting.
We do. National Night Out.
We are going to have that meeting.
Sent.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Borden?
So to cut to the chase, we've got a draft, we've got one change to incorporate what you just described. Right? So what else? What are we changing?
We're adding a bonus for parking.
Okay?
Madam Mayor?
At the list, I mean,
Madam Mayor?
we're just going to stare at each other and on the 6th have this conversation. We can't do this right now. You can't move forward saying, make these 2 changes and move forward and publish and issue it. What else, what other changes are we talking about?
I think Councilmember Little Roberts had an additional change as well.
Madam Mayor,
And-
the one that I just brought up regarding putting verbiage in that any changes, any further requests from the city need to come in advance of completing the RFP. They're turning in their response to the RFP.
Right, that would go out to everybody. Okay?
Which is procedural. Okay, well,
I just want to make sure we had you kind of had the list so you understood if there was consensus of other stuff, you knew it, and if you didn't have more stuff, then at least you knew what the red line was going to entail. So there's no surprises on the 6th.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Milo?
is there any, or were there any other changes, and is that it? Because Ashley was taking notes, I know, and you were too, but just want to make sure that those are the only, so there's basically 3 changes.
So if you'd like, I could
Or-
just restate if
Yes,
that,
please.
if that would be helpful. So Councilwoman Little Roberts mentioned just making sure that if there's a proposal that's seeking anything beyond the RFP, that that's made known prior to the proposal being submitted. There was also the comment about making sure that if there's 3 or less proposals, that all of those are presented to the council. If there's more than that, the committee would whittle the recommendation down to 3, but ultimately, the decision-making authority rests with the council.
Well, they would still recommend,
Right,
but all the top 3 would present.
correct. Yep,
And the final decision maker is the council.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then just that, then this final one, making sure that all those are incorporated prior to it being released.
I think you captured them.
Oh, and then, of course, I'm sorry, the parking. Thank you. So
Parking
adjusting the
bonus,
parking
yes.
to add a bonus where up to 10 points are awarded based on the net increase of parking stalls. Thank you.
And Madam Mayor,
Mr. Cameron.
I just would also like to see included either an addendum or an additional piece that speaks to, not necessarily the individuals, but who is going to make up the selection committee.
Okay. Can do that.
That would come back for council.
Yeah, names would come back from council approval, but in terms of representing entities, organizations, who the stakeholders are.
We can do that. Yep, we'll add that as well, Councilmember.
Okay, anything further?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Burnt.
I move, didn't I already make a motion, or we're just making a new one?
It was already on the table.
I already made the motion.
Madam Mayor, there's a motion and a second on the table.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Borden?
Aye. Right on top of you.
Thank you, members of the council, Mayor. Appreciate your support of this, and we'll make those changes and get this back for your approval.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum.
So I'm assuming we're going to we'll be able to see this, it'll come back on consent, and if anybody has any issues with it, we'll pull it off consent, yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, can I just echo real quick, Cameron, great work, appreciate you bringing this to us. Ashley, Mr. Lakey, appreciate your work on this. As is continually reported every week in our local newspaper, there is an intense amount of desire to be located in our downtown core, and it's awesome, and it's great to see. I appreciate you guys bringing this opportunity for us to look at it.
Thank you.
Really,
Appreciate that.
really exciting.
Thank you.
There's a lot of energy.
Yeah, it's great. It's a good problem to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 7B is a public hearing for H 2019-0070. I will open the public hearing. First, if anyone is new here this evening, our process for public hearings is that we hear from staff, a presentation including their staff report regarding the application. Then the developer or applicant would get up and present their proposal. At that point, we will take public testimony, and we have a 3-minute time limit. There is a timer on the screen that shows you the time allotment, and if you exceed that, I will ask you to summarize at that point. I won't cut you off mid-sentence. I just haven't gotten there yet. That's rude. After that, we'll have the developer come up and summarize and answer any questions and answer any final questions from City Council. It's important to note that City Council does have a public hearing document in front of them that includes planning and zoning minutes and comments, our staff reports, agency comments, and all of that is public, available to you. So they use that in determining their decision that they render. So with that said, I will turn this over to Kevin for staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This first item before you is a development agreement modification for Verona subdivision Lot 12, Block 12. This is located right here at the corner of McMillan and 10 Mile, across the way from Walmart. It's about a 1.76 acre piece of land, zone CG. So it was annexed back in 2001. It was rezoned, platted, and they entered into a development agreement back in 2017. And most recently, in 2019, they received approval for a Jackson's fuel facility and convenience store. The request here is to modify an existing development agreement to remove this subject property from the existing development agreement, which encompasses this whole area. The reason for this is twofold. The first is all the surrounding properties are owned by another entity. So this would facilitate the development of the two separate areas. The second reason for amending this development agreement would be to switch the access point along McMillan Road. So the applicant is requesting to move it from this existing location here about 170 feet to the west and keep it a full access at this time. So ACHD has reviewed and approved this change with the condition that the current access point be closed, landscaped, the sidewalk extended, and that at a future date they reserve the right to change the full access to a right in and right out. Staff is in agreement with these conditions and is also recommending a condition requiring the applicant to enter into a cross-access agreement with the properties to the east. So staff is recommending approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. The only written testimony received was from Joe Thompson, the applicant's representative, who is in agreement with the staff report. And with that, we'll stand for questions.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Any questions from council? Mr. Palmer?
Madam Mayor, that rendering, is that what's intended? Is this style?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Palmer, yes, that is what has been approved through the Certificate of Zoning Compliance and Design Review that we currently have.
Okay.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Good evening. Thank you for joining us. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Sure, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm Mike Baldner from Holly Troxel, 877 Main Street, Boise, Idaho. We'll be very quick. We've had a good interaction with staff and city attorney's office. The applicant accepts all the conditions. I'm only here because I have some exposure to the prior agreements, if there are any questions. And then Joe Thompson from our architect is here to answer any technical questions you may have. So I'll leave it at that unless there's any questions.
No?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Clerk, did we have any signups to testify?
Madam Mayor, only the applicant signed in.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to provide testimony on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
anybody jumping up and down? Move we close the public hearing on 7A, H-2019-0070.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
I move we approve item 7A, H-2019-0070, include all staff and applicant testimony.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the H 2019-0070. There's no discussion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
I'm just going to feel like sorry to belabor this, but is this the design that was submitted in 2007, 8-ish when it was approved previously? Or is
No.
this isn't the next version or a new? I just am scared, wanted to make sure we're not requiring them to build what may have been an older version. I'm not an artistic guy or architectural or anything. It just feels to me like almost like it looks like an older version, and I just wanted to make sure they knew if they wanted to do a newer version that it would probably be welcomed. I don't know, maybe it looks great. It just looks old school to me.
I agree.
Thanks, I'm glad I'm not alone.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
I wanted to make sure we're on the record that Councilmember Palmer's talking about the aesthetics of private property, and I just want to make sure that I didn't need to turn my bell tone, and I'm hearing you correctly.
Madam Mayor,
I wouldn't call you out like that, but that is true.
I know, right?
We almost fell out of our seats.
Making motions for art, questioning aesthetics.
Madam Mayor,
New.
to be fair, if I had thought there was any chance of that motion before passing, I obviously wouldn't have made it. But I don't think it's this council's job to design buildings for people. It was extremely frustrating when we did it for another property where it took months and months of extra time. I don't want to design it for Jackson's. It may be awesome. Just in case it was an older style that they had built, that rather than try to have a whole nother thing to bring before us, and knowing this council and the weird things that we may latch on to, which now here I am doing it, not submit, their new version of what they're building, because I see a lot of them going up and they're gorgeous, and this just looked very different. So I don't know if it's what they'd rather build or not. So it's what's here. So I'm going to shut up now.
I love it. I just think you could keep talking.
I'm just going to get a big shovel and just keep digging. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm good with it. That's what you want to build.
Kevin,
Bring it on.
did you
Is there-
have something to add?
Councilmember Palmer, is there to answer your question, this rendering is from the Certificate of Zoning Compliance and Design Review application we received this year.
Great.
We've already approved it. It meets the design standards of the Architectural Standards Manual for our commercial zoning. I merely included it to let you know what's going there. Thank you.
Good to go. Let's prove this thing.
Okay. Any further conversation? No. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum? Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts? Councilmember Cavanagh? Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
All ayes. Thank you. Okay, item 7, amended C, public hearing for H 2019-0062. I will open this public hearing with staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Next item on the agenda is the Caldera Canyon subdivision. The applicant is before you this evening to talk about a preliminary plat and a development agreement modification on the subject property. The site consists of 2.83 acres of land currently zoned R8 in the city, and it's located at 1294 East Layfield Drive. This property was annexed in 2005 as part of the Quinzer Commons subdivision, and as part of that approval, it was required to be included in required to enter into a development agreement with the city, and that's the reason for the modification this evening, to change the terms of those agreements, or remove the property from the Quinzer Commons development agreement and enter into their own agreement. And then in 2006, it was later final platted as a lot and block in Quinzer Commons subdivision. So the applicant is here this evening to, again, subdivide the property. There is an existing home on the property that is connected to city services, sewer and water. It will remain on one of the lots there in the lower southwest corner. And then there'll be additional 15 lots proposed with the plat before you this evening. and then 3 common lots. The subject property is currently mixed-use community with a neighborhood center overlay district on it. Typically with that designation, we're anticipating densities, at least a target density of 8 dwelling units to the acre. Because this is an infill site, the commission felt that the density that the applicant is proposing of 5.83 is generally consistent with that. Because it's under that 5-acre minimum too, there is no requirement for open space. So complying with the R8 dimensional standards and putting as much as they can on this particular property, this is about the highest density that they could obtain and achieve with the current comp plan designation. So again, both staff and the commission were amenable to that, recommended that slight reduction in density. I would mention to the council that there are adjacent properties that are still vacant and still have that same designation on them. So we do anticipate further intensification of those properties and maybe make up some of that density in the future as those properties proceed with annexation into the city. The applicant is proposing an extension of 1 stub street. You can see here it's running north and south. That will stub at the north boundary. And then 4 of the 15 new lots will have access to a common driveway, which is located along the north boundary of the site. This is also the landscape plan. The only required landscaping for the proposed subdivision is the 20-foot landscape buffer along North Layfield Drive, which is designated a collector street on the master street map with ACHD. The only, so the applicant has, because the existing home is on a lot and block, the staff felt that that could redevelop in the future. So we did ask the developer or the applicant to provide us an exhibit on how that could redevelop in the future and how access would be provided. You can see here on the right-hand side of the schematic, there is a potential for another home on the site, which would again slightly increase the density for the development overall. And then the common drive would be extended into the sites to provide that access. The applicant is requesting 2 waivers from the council this evening, and that's in regards to UDC 113A3. In the staff report and during the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, it came up as a topic of discussion. But the existing home currently has an access to East Layfield Drive, which is the collector road. The applicant would like to keep that existing access. And because the code requires, there is an adjacent property to the east of this site that's vacant, our code also requires that subdivisions provide local street access to those properties when it's abuts a collector road or an arterial roadway. So staff's original recommendation was to provide a stub street to the east, to the vacant property, and then provide a driveway connection to the existing home and close the existing access. But again, under your purview, the code does allow you to grant that waiver, and I would inform you that the commission did recommend that you allow the existing home to remain as is and not require the stub street to the east. And that was consistent with ACHD's approval as well. They also granted the access and did not require any street extensions as part of their approval. The applicant did provide conceptual home elevations for you, so you can see here all single story and more of an infill patio home style product on this project. Key items, so the commission did recommend approval at the June 20th meeting. Speaking in favor was Penelope Constantikis, and then no one testified in opposition or commented on the application. So items of discussion by the commission, again, density was a concern because of the comp plan designation on the property, and the commission wanted to make sure that the vacant properties in the surrounding area could still meet the guidelines of the comprehensive plan when they came in and developed. And they were concerned how that would transition with the proposed infill development that you're looking and reviewing this evening. The other item was the driveway waiver and the stub street waiver, as I mentioned to you. And then also what came up was during the Planning and Zoning Commission, there is existing landscaping along East Layfield Drive that the applicant would like to retain and use as part of the development. And the Planning and Zoning Commission gave the applicant, modified the condition and allow them to seek alternative compliance to allow that existing landscape to remain and basically provide the requirement for the additional trees that are required by code. So again, the only outstanding issue for you this evening are the 2 waivers for the existing home to keep their access and the requirement to waive the extension of the stub street to the east. Staff did receive additional comments from Penelope, the applicant's representative, I think she'll provide some clarification for you this evening. But other than that, both staff and the commission are recommending approval of the project, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bill. Council, any questions? Okay. The applicant here. Good evening. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Penelope Constantikis, Post Office Box 405, Boise, Idaho 83701. As you know, Caldera Canyon's an infill development, and it's one of the few remaining parcels in the square mile that this parcel sits in that still has enough space to develop. There is a parcel to the east of us and a parcel to the north of us that are also large enough to redevelop. We have a fire station just a few thousand feet down the street on Locust Grove. There's commercial and retail at Eagle and Ustick, about a mile and a half away. There's no new infrastructure that will be required with this development other than the to and through for sewer and water, which is standard. I don't have anything really to offer with the development agreement modification. I think it's more of a housekeeping item than anything else. So we are retaining the existing home and platting the remainder of the parcel. And the first waiver that we're asking for is to remove the stub street requirement to the east. A couple of reasons for that. One of them is we'll lose one, if not two, parcels, which will drop our density down even farther. And then if you would open up Exhibit 1, Bill. It's the top one. There you go. So it's a little rudimentary, but what I tried to do here is demonstrate the access activity that's going on relative to our parcel and the immediate vicinity. So Quinzer Way is a stub street. That's to the west of us. We're putting in a stub street. That's the second blue arrow. And then if you can scan down just a little bit farther, Bill. There we go. So then when Mr. Graham's parcel in the future, when it develops, he'll have accessibility through Quinzer, our stub street, and then stuff going on at Greenhaven. And with regard to the parcel to the east of us, it's not vacant. There's actually more of an estate with some pretty exquisite horses that live there. So they can put a stub street in alignment with the public street that's across from the house, and there's enough span along their north property line. So I just wanted to show you all of the possible future connections for a street network relative to this general vicinity. If you would pull up number 2. The second one, I wanted to show where this additional stub street would go in, and I discussed this in the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. Actually, there isn't anywhere really along that east property line where we can put a stub street in that will function in addition to losing lots. But there's already a nice residence there and a lot of outbuildings that they use to serve their horse activity. So if for no other reason than the density, we'd like to not have to put that stub street in. At the P&Z hearing, I did make some comments about surface water and irrigation. We've got some flood irrigating that's going on in the vicinity of the site. So the project engineer is going to be walking with Mr. Graham and Mr. Young, who are here this evening. They're the two property owners, to sort out the PI system for our site. There's some 24-hour flooding, delivery once a week issues that they need to sort out. But that's in motion now, so they'll get that figured out. We'll have it all tidied up in time for our final plat. The second waiver that we're asking for is for the existing driveway access to Layfield. And if you would open up number 3. So this image shows what happens if we try to put an interior access to the existing residence and not use the Layfield access point. So in order to do that, we would have to extend the shared driveway westward and then traverse down, all the way down to the end. And then in order for them to be able to use their garage, we're going to have to go pretty deep, almost to the back of sidewalk, to get enough of a radius in there for them to be able to access the garage. If you would open up number 4, Bill, thank you. In addition to the problem with the length of this service drive, which would require more fire department turnaround or hammerhead. So I haven't even gotten that incorporated in there. We'll end up removing a bunch of the landscape buffer along the Layfield. There's just no other way to get the turning radius in there. So we're hopeful that you'll consider the existing access point. On a traffic count perspective, this is a really stable neighborhood in terms of traffic counts. The traffic count on Layfield, which only a very short section of it is actually residential collector. The traffic counts are way below what they would be if they were going to threshold for too many trips. And of course, the trips that are logged for Layfield now include the trips that are generated by the existing residents. So they would like to keep it. It's a horse property, and they have outbuildings. You can see them to the west of the pink corridor there, where they're still actively engaged in equestrian activities. So we'd like to keep the existing driveway into perpetuity, basically. Just leave it there for as long as the house is there, I guess. So let's see. So we've got the property line, the north fence line. One of the items I discussed with Mr. Graham was his desire to have a fencing solution because we've got stock next door to the north. So we're going to park our fence on the north boundary line in from the property line so that the stock fence for Mr. Graham is not disturbed. The project team will work with the fire department to coordinate access for lots 7 and 11, which are at the end of the shared driveway, and we'll get that taken care of as well. There was one new item that showed up after our Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, and that was the ACHD staff report. And Bill, if you would open up number 5. So the project engineer and I came out to Meridian and met with the fire department. We met with Joe. And we developed a hammerhead turnaround that was satisfactory to the fire department. It would have to be signed with no parking, obviously. But exhibit number 6, if you would please, is the problem. We're going to lose another lot because the district was not willing to accept the fire department's acceptance of a hammerhead. So we're going to have to do a temporary turnaround until such time as a parcel to the north develops, unless the city council is willing to weigh in on that. And I'm not sure that there is any other answer other than doing what the highway district wants. So if you have some ideas, that would be awesome. And lastly, we will submit an alternative compliance application for the landscaping along Layfield. There's some mature arborvitae that now line the street. We discussed with planning and zoning adding trees, which would require taking arborvitae out. I suggest that maybe as the arborvitae that are there now reach their natural life end, that they be replaced with trees over time so that we end up with trees there. But at this point in time, we'd like to not tear out the mature, healthy arborvitae. So with that, again, we're asking for a couple of waivers. One of them is retaining the existing access point, and the second is the deletion of the requirement for a stub street to the east. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Penelope. Any questions from council?
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Mr. Clerk.
Madam Mayor, there were no sign-ins for this no sign-ins for this hearing.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to provide testimony? Thank you. You'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Dan Young, and the address is 1400 East Layfield Drive.
Thank you, Dan.
I am the horse property to the east of the proposed subdivision, and the stub street would just dead end at my fence and my horse pasture and horse barn. I don't see a need for it, so I thought I'd throw that in there. So, and they have agreed to meet with us in regards to the irrigation water and work that out prior to the next meeting, so.
That's great.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Dan. Yes, sir. Good evening. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Steve Wagner from 1370 East Loyalty and Heritage Commons. And I don't understand these schematics real well, so I guess probably I have more questions, but is North Heritage Avenue going to be opened up then to go into it, or is that farther to the east? And then the other question I have, is it going to increase the traffic in Heritage Commons?
Okay, we will ask the applicant to address that. Thank you. Penelope, let me just first see if there's any other testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to provide testimony? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Penelope Constantakis. If I understand it, Mr. Wagner, is that correct? The new street into Caldera Canyon will be in alignment with Heritage View, which is standard transportation planning. In terms of an increase in traffic, the most recent traffic counts I found for Layfield were somewhere around 1,300 vehicle trips per day, which is less than a local street standard. So we don't have excessive traffic on Layfield now. The subdivision will add in a 24-hour period about 150 trips, excluding the existing home because those trips are already counted in the traffic counts. So I'm not sure that the district didn't have any problem with the additional trips. It's really pretty minor given the low traffic count already on Layfield. So that's what I can offer.
Okay.
If there's anything else.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further information needed from the applicant, staff, or those that testified? Seeing none.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
I move that we close the public hearing on H 2019-0062.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on item 7C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
I think we've got good explanation from the applicant of what's being proposed and some good recommendations coming from our Planning and Zoning Commission. So with that, I move that we approve H 2019-0062 and to permit the alternative compliance with regards to the existing arborvitae in lieu of the trees as requested, as well as allowing the continued use of the existing driveway to the existing home in lieu of the stub street that would be otherwise required in accordance with UDC-3A-3.
Second.
And that's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion from council? Any further information needed, clarified, from staff? Okay. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt? Councilmember Palmer? Councilmember Little Roberts? Councilmember Cavanagh? Councilmember Borden?
Hey,
All ayes. Item 7D, as amended, is a public hearing for H 2019-0072. We'll open this public hearing with staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Next item on the agenda is the Elevate Franklin Storage Development Agreement modification. If you recall, this property's been coming back before you for about a year now, or 6 months or so. It's currently zoned LO in the city, and it's located just east of 10 Mile on the north side of Franklin Road. The reason why the zoning map that you see before you is LO is because the applicant hasn't executed the development agreement that was required as part of their application submittal with the rezone, and that will happen if this council approves the amended changes this evening. That will go into effect, and they'll proceed with their conditional use permit at Planning and Zoning Commission. So if you recall, this application was before you with an accessory use permit about 6-7 months ago. And it was, at the time, the way the code was structured is a residential use facility was allowed as an accessory use in conjunction with the primary use. Again, the council struggled with how to place conditions on this particular site and how would we monitor the residents from the multifamily to the north of this using this facility, and that it could not be used as a standalone storage facility. Just recently, the developer applicant came before this body and received approval of a text amendment to allow residential storage facilities in the R15 and R40 zoning district with the approval of a conditional use permit. So rather than execute their development agreement, they waited to see if the text amendment would be approved and then move forward with their DA. So really it's more of a procedural change for you this evening. They're basically removing the provisions in the DA that requires the accessory use and changing it to match with what this body approved with the current UDC text amendment. And then I'd also mention to you that on the 15th, the CUP is scheduled for the Planning and Zoning Commission to take action in conjunction with those UDC changes. So again, this is the first step to kind of unravel that approval and get them moving in the right direction. Staff did not receive any written testimony on this application. Again, staff is recommending approval, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bill. Council, any questions at this time? The applicant representative? Good evening,
30
Becky.
seconds or less. Becky McKay, Engineering Solutions, 1029 North Rosario Business Address. I think Bill's done a good job of explaining what's before you. The development agreement was drafted when the property was approved for the R15 zoning designation. However, we were encumbered with the accessory standards for the mini storage facility, but now that we do have the new residential storage option in the code, we are asking the council to modify the development agreement. And Councilman Borton made the comment that if we executed that agreement with the R15 zone and the accessory storage units, then don't come back asking for a modification. So we did not execute it, we held it, and then went through our text amendment. And so now prior to that expiring, the staff indicated that we should file this modification of an unexecuted development agreement. And so now the provisions all match the code. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Becky. Council, any questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, are there any names signed up to testify?
Madam Mayor, there are not.
Okay, that's all right. I was going to ask if there's anyone who wishes to provide testimony, so come on forward. Thank you for joining us. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Gail Bordenkircher. I live at 3800 West Perugia, right next to where they're building it. And I want to know where they're going to have the entrance. Are they going to have it on Franklin and then have the walls? Are they going to do it like the storage container that's on 10 Mile right now? How are they going to build it? Because that doesn't really, the map up there doesn't really show what they're doing.
That doesn't show, and it's a great question. We'll ask the applicant to
That's, I just want to know
answer
where the opening is, because that'll affect us greatly, because they're building right now, as you know, a subdivision right behind the Franklin, and so they're supposed to make a road that goes on to Perugia, so we're going to be inundated with a lot of people. So we need to have the entrance on Franklin, and want to know the set hours of when they're going to be, you know, how long they're going to be opening it up. Is it 10 o'clock at night that they, you know, have the access to it, or, you know, what time period do they close?
Good questions.
Thank you. Those are great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony? I figured you joined us for a reason.
Surprised you.
Came out of retirement, huh? Welcome, Dale. If you'll please state your name and address.
I haven't figured out retirement yet. Dale Newberry, representing 10 Mile Christian Church. And our concern too is the access to this, whether it's going to come off of the main street coming off of Franklin, or whether the access is going to be around the corner. Because with church members coming in and out of there, we're concerned about maybe trucks, people trying to get into that from the side, and we're just concerned about where it's going to be located, the access in. Oh,
That's great.
Same question.
Again, good questions, and I'm sure they're going to be good neighbors and communicate with you. I kind of would imagine you could. Any further testimony? Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony? Okay, Becky?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So to answer the questions, we will not have any vehicular access off of Franklin Road or Umbria Hills, which is the primary collector that goes in and serves the church. Our access will be at the very end of Perugia. So it'll be at the far west end. And this is just a small facility and primarily intended for the residents of the multifamily development. So if they're concerned about, you know, like people pulling large RVs and stuff and possibly interfering with their traffic, that would not be the case. It would probably be mostly pickups and, you know, people with a small U-Haul trailer, and there could be a U-Haul truck that comes in here, but obviously it would turn down Perugia and go to the very end where our gate is, the far west end. And we would be glad to provide them with a site plan and talk with them and answer any further questions that they have, and be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, council, any questions regarding this application? If there is no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
I move we close the public hearing on item 7D.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
I move we approve H 2019-0072.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 7D. There's no discussion. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Borden?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 7E is a public hearing for our 2019 Fall Parks and Recreation fees. And we get to hear from Colin one last time, so I almost want to call you Colin. Just for old time's
We were
sake.
just talking about that this morning at the council prep meeting, so I appreciate that for old time's sake.
We needed to reminisce a
Yeah.
little bit, right?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So our fall activity guide releases Friday, August 9th. This is a list of the classes and their fees that will be included in that activity guide. And so I would stand for any questions about any of them, but we'll look forward to your approval.
Thank you, Colin. Any questions from council?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Burnt?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Colin for your dedicated service to our city. You've been a loyal employee for a long, long time. You're a dear friend, and I wish you well in your future endeavors in Boise.
Thank you, Councilman Burnt.
Yeah, we kind of go back a long way, and it a little bit hurts my heart to see you go, but proud of you and wish you great luck, and we hope to continue to see you around.
Madam Mayor,
Thank
follow
you.
up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just say really quickly, I appreciate that, and it hurts me as well. I will continue to live in Meridian, though, and I look forward to continuing to figure out how to get involved once I've got my feet under me in my new position.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Mr. Burnt?
Your party's not till Friday. You still have time. I mean, seriously, I mean, like, today's only Tuesday.
We've
Right.
already replaced him.
I'm already replaced and gone, pretty much.
Nice. Okay, a little bit too late.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavanagh?
I want to echo the comments. I'm not going to be able to be here, unfortunately, on Friday, and so or Thursday. I'm not going to be here Thursday either. Kind of writing some notes about events and activities that have resulted in our community because of Colin. Things like movie night, taking over
all of them.
Correct. I mean, it's all of them. It's every event. And each time you touch them, they got bigger and better. And,
More organized.
It's common for us when our citizens think about, they envision who represents Meridian to think of a police officer, a firefighter, or a mayor. And I think of Colin. And our kids, our grandkids, our legacy as a wonderful community has been driven by you. And I am so fortunate to call you a friend and a former colleague. And I know that you've left Ward as well and a loss to them as well. The city of Boise is reaping many riches from you, and I hope it is as beneficial for your family, this move, as the benefit our community had from your service to us.
Amen.
We'll miss you.
Thank you, Councilman Kavanagh.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Milo?
I should have went first, like I was going to, because I can't say anything now without crying. So can I just come give you a hug?
Absolutely.
Dean, I don't know how you reflect that on the record, but.
I got a picture.
I think that's a hug from all of us.
Yeah. If we say
Thank
no,
you.
if we deny the fees, does he stay? Is that how it works? Put that in there.
One last hurrah for Colin.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite get there.
Yeah.
We could
You'll
always
just make a
continue
headache
it.
for Jake is what you will be doing.
Right, I like Jake.
Yeah, it doesn't work, does it? Well, thank you, Colin.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Milo?
I move that we accept the 2019 Fall Parks and Rec fees.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, I think, to close public hearing.
Oh.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. And then,
Madam Mayor. Try again.
we will try again.
Move that we approve the 2019 Fall Parks and Recreation fees.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the fees under 7E as amended. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Kavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Borden?
Aye.
All ayes. I Item 7F is a public hearing for the proposed mayor and city council member compensation ordinance and update.
Huge turnout.
Mr. Clerk, are there any signups?
Madam Mayor, there were no signups.
Are you sure?
Is there anyone who would like to provide testimony?
Like to provide testimony?
Colin?
Okay,
Gotta say it like.
seeing none.
Golden.
Council, I don't see any testimony. Do I have a motion to close public hearing?
Madam
Madam
Mayor?
Mayor, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Figure
Ms.
since
Miley.
I'm not gonna be here next year, I'll, can't read it still. I move that we close the public hearing on 7F.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on 7F. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
I move that we approve the.
It's in the ordinance.
Oh, it's in the ordinances, okay.
Yeah,
And that's it.
okay.
Move that we move on to ordinances.
Thank you. Item 8A is ordinance 19-1835. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this by title?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 7, Section 9 of the Meridian City Code, providing for city council members' compensation and providing for market adjustments and providing for a summary, providing for a waiver of the second and third reading rules, and providing an effective date.
You've heard this read by title. Anyone want to hear it read in its entirety? Okay. Ms. Mylum?
Oh, I move that we approve ordinance number 19-1835 with suspension of rules.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 8A. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer?
save the best for last. Just same point I made before, I do believe that they should be increased to attract younger individuals, but I feel like this is a little steep. But I definitely appreciate the efforts of the committee. Not a job I don't want to have to try to do to convince a council to do.
Mr. Kavner?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to be voting against the motion. I want to explain the reason why. I echo Councilmember Palmer's. I appreciate the work of the committee. I actually don't have any issues with the numbers. The two pieces that I'm struggling with and I haven't been able to overcome is the tiered approach to compensation. If we want to increase it, let's either increase it to the 13,500 and leave it for 2 years, or increase it for the 15,000 and leave it for 2 years. Let's not tier it. I also don't think that the city council needs to be eligible for a market adjustment. I've kind of maintained that this shouldn't be a person's full-time job, and a market adjustment to me just doesn't seem necessary. So I don't know if the council is amenable to making changes. If they are, I'm very supportive. But if we're looking to approve it as presented, I'll be voting against it.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
I strongly agree with part of what Councilman Cavanagh was speaking is to the market adjustment. And I think a lot of the reason that thinking about that, something that the council votes on in the budget, and it feels awkward that they're voting on their own raise as part of the budget itself, as opposed to a separate. So they're saying, well, if we approve a raise, then we get a raise. If we approve a raise for everybody, then we get a raise too. And it's, yeah, I don't like the way that feels. So I wouldn't be opposed to amending it. That's part of it.
Okay, any further discussion to the motion that's in front of this body?
And then we can amend it.
Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
No.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
No.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
No.
Councilmember Borden?
And I'll vote aye to break the tie. Item 8B is ordinance 19-1836. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this by title?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 6, Section 5 of the Meridian City Code, providing for the mayor's compensation and providing for market adjustments and providing for a summary, providing for a waiver of the second and third reading rules, and providing an effective date.
You've heard this read by title. Is there anyone who would like to hear it read in its entirety? Thank you for not saying yes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
I move we approve ordinance 19-1836 with suspension of rules.
A motion is second to approve item 8B. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
consistent with my opinion that elected officials should make somewhat less than what the position frankly deserves in the work and the role that it actually is. I feel that the position of the mayor is, if it were that commensurate amount of work, I guess in the private sector, it would certainly be worth six figures. And given that the raise is still keeping it short of what the actual work entailed deserves, I'm definitely in favor of this increase in this ordinance.
It is enough to raise a family, though.
It definitely is.
Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
All ayes. Item 8C is ordinance 19-1837. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this by title?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's an ordinance H 2019-0035 Wagner Farms for annexation of a parcel of land located in the southeast one quarter of the southeast one quarter of Section 22, Township 4 North, Range 1 West, Boise, Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, as described in Attachment A, and annexing certain lands and territory situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the City of Meridian as requested by the City of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of 2.46 acres of land from RUT to CC Community Business zoning districts in the Meridian City Code, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance, and providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing an effective date.
Okay, you've heard this read by title. I don't see anyone wanting to hear it read further. Council, do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I move that we approve ordinance number 19-1837 with suspension of rules.
A motion is second to approve item 8C. Is there any discussion? Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
All ayes. Do I have anything for item 9? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
we go into executive session pursuant to Idaho State Code 74206, 1C and 1F.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Burnt?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh? Councilmember Borton?
Aye.